Good evening, Assalamu alaikum, and thank you for watching. This is part 9 of my review of this book. There is a God by Anthony Flew. We concluded part 8 with discussing the first point that Anthony Flew considered as a very strong argument for the existence of God, and that point is the fact that there are laws that govern this universe, that govern nature. Because laws are basically some form of programming, some form of coding that is embedded in this universe. And as we all know, coding and programming is basically information. And information can only come from an intelligent being. This information and this coding and programming has been governing this universe from the very beginning, from the start point, from the first microsecond of the Big Bang. As Stephen Hawking has stated, that if the speed of expansion of the universe was less than the current speed by the most minute fraction, and he gave a figure, I don't recall the exact figure, 10 to the power of something like 88 or 14, something that is extremely minute. If the speed of expansion was less by that most minute figure, then the whole universe would have crumbled again and vanished. And if it was faster than that, even from the first few milliseconds of the start of this universe, then it would have gone, the expansion would have gone out of control, and we would not have had this universe that we live in today. So we have to ponder on these points, that there is a power, a very intelligent power, a very supreme and superior mind, and a wise being that has governed all this from the very beginning. And we cannot really attribute this intelligence, this knowledge, this intentionality, this rationality to matter, to this senseless, blind, lifeless substance or material or matter. Because we examine matter and we deal with matter, atoms, subatomic particles, objects, non-living objects all the time. We deal with these things. And we have never seen an atom or a subatomic particle exhibit the kind of sophisticated and complex intelligence that is required to govern this universe by the laws that are set and embedded within it, according to which it is set, and the ones that are embedded within it. This kind of extremely complex programming can only come from an intelligent being. So it cannot be from the matter, because we know that matter does not possess that. Substance, objects do not possess that. We have to look for a being who is separate from this universe to confer this kind of control, this kind of intelligent control, very measured control over every aspect of this existence. So basically this is a summary of the first point. Then he goes on to discuss that this universe is very hospitable, and he describes it as biophilic. It is hospitable to life. It is conducive of life, for life to arise and for life to sustain and flourish on this earth, at least. He gives a very nice parable. He says, if you go one day to a hotel room, and just by coincidence you find that this hotel room, the furniture and the design is exactly according to your taste. And when you open, for instance, the fridge, you find the exact same foods and drinks and beverages that you would have chosen. You go to the library and you find the exact books that you have in your own library that you like to read. You go to the videos and CDs, you find the exact same music and exact same movies and documentaries and programs that you normally watch at home. You find even the pictures hanging on the wall, the exact same pictures that you like and that you've chosen for your own home. And so on and so on. Even the clothes in the wardrobe, you'll find those are the same style that you normally wear. If you actually go and find this, and then you are bound to think that someone has prepared this room especially for you. Could be a surprise from your wife, for instance, who arranged all this to your liking, to your convenience. And now this example that he gives, he calls it the vacation scenario. He calls is a clumsy, limited parallel to the so-called fine-tuning argument. This universe is so finely tuned to allow for it to function, allow for life to originate and to flourish and persist, and to allow for human beings to come and to survive and to prosper on this earth. Everything every single aspect of this existence is perfectly measured to the most minute detail that allows for us to live. The temperature, the concentration of the oxygen, the distance between us and the sun, the atmosphere that protects us from the meteors and other objects and from radiations, the harmful radiations, the percentage of water and earth and land on this earth, the constitution of water, every single aspect, the composition of the air, the composition of the earth, every single aspect is fine-tuned for life, and more specifically for human life as well. So you can't help it but to wonder who made it in such a very convenient and biophilic way, as I mentioned earlier. He says here, and he's now quoting a physicist by the name of Freeman Dyson. He says, Freeman Dyson says, the more I examine the universe and study the details of its architecture, this is a physicist talking, not even a philosopher. The more I examine the universe and study the details of its architecture, the more evidence I find that the universe is that the universe in some sense knew we were coming. This universe was prepared for our coming. Now, do the atoms and subatomic particles and the lifeless, senseless, unintelligent matter possess this planning capability to look and see the future and to plan for the future, and not just the near future, but a future that is several billion years ahead? Because this universe that we live in is about 13.8 billion years old. Human beings only arrived, the current human beings, the intelligent human beings, for instance, were only detected on this earth about 200,000 years ago. Life in general only appeared on this universe about 4 to 4.3 billion years ago. So who planned ahead several billion years? Doesn't this planning require an intelligent being to plan ahead so far? Not only to plan, but to actually implement the plan. You have to know that some kind of intelligence, some kind of intelligent mind exists. Some kind of intelligence, some kind of rational being exists. Some kind of rational entity or some kind of intelligent entity exists. And you have to pick. You have to make your own pick. Should I call that entity Mother Nature? And if I call it Mother Nature, what do I mean by Mother Nature? Do I mean the clouds? Do I mean the mountains? Do I mean the water, the sea? What do I mean? Do I mean the raw material of which Mother Nature, the raw material that forms this nature, the atoms or subatomic particles? And do we see such qualities in these matters, in these substances, for us to attribute these qualities to them? Do we actually see these qualities in those things that we handle in our daily life? We are forced to think that that this entity that has this kind of knowledge and wisdom, and mind and intelligence, rationality, intentionality, we are forced to think that it is outside of this universe. And theists basically call this entity God. So, in other words, the laws of nature seem to have been crafted so as to move the universe toward the emergence of sustenance of life. This is the anthropic principle. This is what scientists call the anthropic principle, popularized by such thinkers as Martin Rees, John Barrow, and John Leslie. It is calculated that if the value of even one of the fundamental constants, such as the speed of light or the mass of an electron, for instance, had been to the slightest degree different, so even the mass of the electron, wow, had been to the slightest degree different, then no planet capable of permitting the evolution of human life could have formed. Now, I will conclude this video by stating that what we see in the fine-tuning of this universe would point to the fine-tuner, that this is a deliberate doing of an intelligent, rational being, or the other explanation that is proposed by atheists, which I will be discussing in the next video, is that it is the multiverse explanation, which basically states that there is an innumerable number of universes out there with different laws than ours, and that ours just happens to be the one that was fortunate enough to have all the right parameters for life to emerge and for human beings to originate and to live within this universe specifically. As you can see, there is no scientific evidence whatsoever for the existence of any universe but the one we live in. We have no measuring tool and no experiment to give us any kind of empirical tangible evidence, any kind of empirical or tangible evidence for the existence of any universe outside of our universe. So this is, at the most, a speculative theory, just some thought somebody came up with no evidence behind it whatsoever. And there are some other problems with this kind of speculation, which I will be discussing in the next video. Before I conclude this one, John Leslie, for instance, says that the fine-tuning is best explained by divine design. He says that he is impressed not by a particular argument, for instance, of fine-tuning, but by the fact that these arguments exist in such profusion. That's an important point. When you find an argument pointing to an intelligent being outside of this universe, you might have some doubt about it because there are some possible weird other explanations like the multiverse that a mind can think of, but even though that we don't have evidence for, but it is something that you can assume or speculate or just think of, some idea that comes to you. Yes. But if you find that all the arguments, this is just one of the hundreds of arguments pointing towards an intelligent being, which theists call God, behind every aspect on this, in every aspect of this creation. we're not talking about just one argument, the argument of fine-tuning or the anthropic principle. There's the cosmological argument. There's the argument of the presence of the laws of nature. And there's an endless number of arguments made by scientists and philosophers throughout history. And you find in each one single argument that the most plausible explanation would be the existence of an entity, an intelligent, knowledgeable, wise, rational, intentional entity outside of this universe that explains that phenomenon that you are discussing. So if you add up and sum up all these arguments, so let's say this argument, the most plausible explanation by 70% or 80% is God, and this one 70 to 80% the most plausible explanation is God. And then, but if you have hundreds of such arguments, and each one points by 70 to 80 or 90% to God, if you add them up, you will find that basically the conclusion that you can reach from the sum of those arguments is almost 100%, or even you can call it 100%, that they all collectively point to the Creator, whom theists call God. Thank you for watching, and please watch the previous videos for more arguments that we have already discussed, and the coming videos, until we are able to completely review this book and conclude it. Thank you very much.